Okay, well, it's the top of the hour. Should we just get started here?
I would think so. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Paul.
So Brad, you might just want to leave your mic on, leave the mic request open and then mute on the bottom right, because the mic request builds the audio channel each time. And that means that short comments get cut because it's not ready yet. Yeah. And then lower right, you can mute yourself and turn your video on. Oh, you just unmuted. You just gave up the audio channel again. So leave it like that, and then go bottom right. You'll find mute local microphone.
That's okay. That's the quick mute. Okay, sorry about that. I get it now.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's not a good UI, but it's a compromise among security.
Yeah, I see that.
Geeks. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, let's get started. I think I'm Jim Fenton. I'm one of the co-chairs of the group. Michael Richardson, who might turn his video on briefly to wave, although it's a little bit fuzzy and dark where he is our other co-chair. And so welcome to the first meeting and the first virtual meeting, the first interim meeting of UUIDREV. This grew out of the dispatch meeting at IETF-114, where Kaiser and Brad had brought some work to extend the UUID specification, and
babe, can you see what Danny wants? He's like peeking in back there.
And
I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
What?
Yes, sir.
Oh wow! I'm. I like it has the cross through the mic.
Yeah, it's a funny user interface.
Sorry.
Use the the one down in the lower right when it's
and it goes red when it's off. Sorry, it's got a little slash to it. Sorry about that, guys.
All good.
Yeah, no problem. In any case, you know, so the decision was made to not only extend it, but given the fact that there are several errata against the original specification, that it was probably time to do an actual revision with the extensions in it. So that's the direction that we're going and what we were chartered to do. We'll have the so as is tradition, Michael, can you go on over to the note well slide? There we go, and you know, maybe scroll down a little bit, and of course, I don't know everybody personally that to the extent that you've participated in IETF in the past, but especially if you're not familiar with any of these things, you really should understand the note well. You know, the summary is that the things that you contribute here to the working group are the kind of the property of the IETF organization, and that you know, if you have proprietary things that that you're presenting, that needs to be couched in certain ways. I mean, we do have ways of yeah, that's thank you for highlighting that. You must disclose that if anything is covered by a patent, and we have associated with IETF documents, we have IPR declarations that go alongside those that can be filed if appropriate. Any questions about
Thanks
that?
Thanks for pointing that out. Makes sense.
Great. And the agenda is fairly simple. Basically, planning for the next IETF meeting in London in a few weeks. Whether we want to do virtual interims, and if we want to kind of go over any issues associated with adopting the what needs to be in the document that we will adopt as a working group document. Is everyone familiar with kind of this notion of document adoption?
I'm not. If you wouldn't mind explaining a bit more, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyone can bring an internet draft to IETF and have it, contributed in that way. The concept of adoption is that when a working group takes on a document, basically the original authors cede control of the document to the working group. So it goes from draft author name something to draft IETF working group name something. And so it's kind of a joint decision. The working group looks at the author's document and says, yes, this is something that we want to adopt, and we want to use this as kind of the basis for our work, and revise it from here. And the author is saying, okay, yes, I'm going to accept the working group's judgment on this document once it's adopted. So so that's basically what's involved. I mean, so what you want to do is you want to get a document that's kind of use the initial freedom in order to come up with a document that is, in the opinion of the authors, sort of close to what we're trying to do, and then the working group takes it over, does the additional revisions, and it's basically under some change control where the working group decides what goes in, and the author becomes an editor, or sometimes the editor is somebody else, but most often in my experience it's been that the original authors remain as editors of the working group document. Is that clear enough?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yep. Yeah, same.
Okay, great. So that's that's kind of what's involved here. We've I'll say kind of decided to do the document management and issue management for the working group on GitHub. We have a GitHub organization, which is IETF-WG-UUIDREV, which is right up there in the notes. And so there isn't a whole lot there yet, but really it's a working group consensus decision to use GitHub for that. And I put out a call for consensus and basically got no responses. So I'm hoping that people are happy with using GitHub for that. Are there any objections? Everybody comfortable in that direction?
Okay by me.
I think that's
It's
Kaiser.
yeah, it's
okay,
all
you
good.
go. Okay, great.
And it's all good with me. Sorry, it's all good with me too. I just didn't know. Kaiser and I had all this previous stuff, these issues and kind of discussion that was on a different GitHub account or whatever. That may not be relevant here, and it's fine. And we can just use the link that you have. I just wanted to bring up that does exist. So I don't know if we want to bring any of that stuff over, or if it's just like totally separate, and the working group is the working group.
Well, I mean,
You
you're
can
welcome to
migrate all those issues over if there's value there that keeps a history, and that's just fine. The reason for this particular structure of things is that it means that the secretariat essentially can take a backup in the event that GitHub implodes, and you know, whatever, in 30 years somebody might want to look at the archives and they'll have them. So that's the only reason why we create these kind of structured organizations for this. Also means that if Jim and I get hit by a bus and you lose access to the thing, that the secretariat actually has administrative control and can, you know, restore it to someone else or whatever.
Cool.
And it
Sounds
also
good.
asserts
No problem, man.
And it also asserts more strongly the IPR rules that we were talking about just now from the note well. So, you know, basically this repository is under the IETF IPR policies.
Cool. Good.
Yeah, and just from my perspective, Brad, I was just kind of freezing that in time and just leaving it be, and I was shifting focus over to the new one, and just going to use that as the new base of operations for all the topics that surround converting 4122 into maybe a new table of contents, or updating and modifying erratas. And then when the time comes, I have to merge the new stuff into the old stuff. Then we can talk about how to do that. But it's kind of just it's a step ahead. So I haven't really thought about it, to be honest.
Perfect. But that sounds great to me. No problem.
Okay, and kind of in anticipation of doing this and kind of using the existing 4122 as the basis for the new document, Michael has gotten the existing text converted over to the current markdown format that we're using for creating RFCs, and so that exists right now in the repository.
Yep, and I sent Michael, I think I sent you an email on Monday, seeing if you could convert or possibly give me the tool so I could convert the other old document as well, just so I have the old.
Okay, did you see a reply from Karsten?
I didn't see a reply from Carson, but I did see you forward the email to Carson, but there was no context. It was just a forwarded email. So I didn't see any, like, I don't know if Carson
Okay,
got
check it out
the
again.
forward or got
I'll
anything.
see if it's in my inbox still. So Karsten has a tool that converts it. He doesn't want to release it yet because it's not perfect, and he wants to be able to see the errors and be able to fix the bugs.
Yeah.
Which is why he wants it to cycle through him, and he's the author of the Cram Down tool. So anyway,
Okay.
so I did forward it to him. He did do the conversion and replied. I thought that reply included you, but let me just look and see.
Yep, because the only thing that's been holding me back from starting just as the group out here is, I wanted to have this meeting just so we were all on the same page. I've been kind of holding off on sitting and doing anything until we could all meet. And then second, I just wanted that table of contents from the old document and the RFC 4122, both of them in cram down, markdown, so that I can then start kind of making them gel. And once I have that, my goal is to really put my head down at next week, starting Monday, and attack the update and getting a draft 0 ready to go in time for IETF 115 so we can discuss it. And
Okay.
Specifically, my goal for draft 0 is to get the 4122 text into the new, better table of contents, so
Right.
we have a good idea of what is missing, and then for new text that needs to be added for some of these things that folks want, and then we can also attack erratas and change text for draft 01, I'll call it, so that we have the basis on what needs to be done. The new additions are in there, and then we know what we're going to do for the next iteration to really tackle and say, okay, this is the action item. We need to make a table, or we need to create a bit layout format in ASCII to fill in this section, or we need to attack like this errata specifically, and kind of really focus on that. So kind of just merging the documents together in a nice way is what I really want for draft 00. And that's what I want to tackle on starting Monday.
So I forwarded the message. It was sent to you. Cisco has some interesting spam filters that do wrong things, and I experience this regularly, and Karsten may have as well. So you want to check your inbox and see if you did get something from me, and if not, well, I'll have to forward it through Google, through Gmail. Which
Yeah, I have it.
You have it now?
I'll send you my Gmail as well, so we can get that CC'd.
Okay, well, I'll just forward it through Gmail, so that's fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Get there.
Thank you. So planning that just thinking timelines, just talking about IETF and virtual meetings. I think our deadline or our goal for the entire document was March 2023. I think I saw was the group's goal for getting this thing to a point where it's like, okay, we can kind of see if there's consensus to adopt. Is that correct?
No, actually, I think that we want to adopt the document like before the end of November, and I thought March was the working group last call goal.
Okay, maybe that's
Is that too
okay,
aggressive
that's
for you?
I'm not gonna say it's not too aggressive. I can dedicate my entire day to this if I have to. I just needed to clarify on that point. So that's a good point. So you want to have all of it by, let me get a pen, November. We have like whatever draft is, everything
00.
merged, combined.
We would adopt the 00 by the end of November.
Oh, okay. I was gonna have 00 by IETF 15.
Well, that's fine.
So,
that's okay. We can do it earlier. Okay.
That's
The
before the end of
milestone
November.
actually says March 2023 is to submit it to the ISG, which means that we've been through working group last call. And
yeah, we're like, okay, we're done, hands off at March 2023. Yeah, okay, so I'm tracking the same way. Got it. Understood.
Yeah, so the reason why we write it that way is that we're going to submit it to the ISG for publication, but of course, they could put us through 6 months of reviews, and we can't control that. It's their fault. So we write the milestone as the thing that we control rather than the thing that is out of our control.
Yeah. So if I'm looking at this, then November 5th is IETF 115. I want to get at the very least 00 submitted to this group the week before, so we can at least discuss it and we have it and it's in people's hands so they can read it. So we come to the meeting with a nice document. We come out of IETF 115 with some goals and stuff that we can work through towards the end of November. And I like monthly releases personally. So I'm thinking we at the end of each month, we have a numbered release. So October is 00, November is 01, December 02, and then we get all the way up to March. And if we don't have anything to change, we don't submit it. But we get all the way to March, and we've got a good between now and then 4 versions possibly that we could iterate on, really major versions that we've been editing, working on. I think that to me seems like my personal preference.
There's a blackout period for the 2 weeks before the IETF, so you have to get your draft in by Monday, October 24th. Midnight UTC. And then the next opportunity you have to post it. Well, it used to be the Monday, but now it's become Saturday. So Saturday, the 5th of November, becomes the next opportunity. And that's the idea, is that people get 2 weeks to read all the new drafts before coming to the meeting. So it would be better if we had it for the 24th, particularly for the people that may be coming to our in-person meeting and may not, they would like to discuss the draft they would like to read the draft that we're actually going to discuss. So that would be better. But if we can't make that, given that we're a new working group and we've been chartered so close to the meeting, I think that's okay. We could post it on the 5th.
I think the 24th is fine for me. I got it written down, and I'm 95% sure I'll be able to dedicate the time to get 00 by the 24th for sure.
That's awesome.
Submitted on the tool up there and active. It might have some sections that say we need to write brand new text for this because it doesn't fit between the things moved, but we'll at least have something we can come together and then maybe hand out those and divvy out different things.
Yeah, I've posted zero
for
zero
tasks.
documents in the past that, were just a table of contents, right?
Yeah,
And-
just
and-
try to
and-
figure out how
and-
you're going to lay it out and really focus.
Yeah, and once you've got that, like the rest of it usually falls into place because people can agree that all these things are in scope, and then you just need to stick text in, and the order is right, and whatever, and then it just writes itself at that point. But
Yeah,
contents
exactly.
is usually key, and I agree with what you're doing, which is reorganize the table of contents and then in a new document and make it all happen. Yeah.
Understood. And I've written a couple books, and you can't phone it in on the table of contents, because if you don't plan that out perfectly in the beginning, you're going to have weird things that you can't figure out where to put in later. So
Right.
that's important, super important. Okay, cool. So I'm good with everything I wanted to kind of get out of this meeting. So I'll turn it back over to you guys. Sorry.
So, Michael, just a little bit of administrative details on that then. So we would take the draft that Kaiser is submitting by the 24th, and then do the consensus call on that for adoption, and maybe confirm that at the meeting at
Yeah, that sounds
1:15.
perfect to me.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right to me too. So we'll plan on that. Could I get a general idea of who's planning on being in person at 1:15 versus online? I will be in person.
But I'm not sure yet. I don't have confirmation of that.
I'm sorry, I didn't see who that was that was talking.
That's Brendan. I've been in stealth mode for the whole meeting.
Ah, hi, Brendan. Thank you.
I
Yeah,
couldn't swing a
you're
trip
very
to
quiet,
London.
Brendan.
So
I'll be in person. I'll be around for the hackathon on Saturday, Sunday as well. Yeah.
And Kaiser, I didn't hear what you said.
I'll be remote. I couldn't swing a trip to London, so I'll be remote.
Good.
Okay, where are you based?
RTP, North Carolina, United States.
Okay.
Eastern. All right.
East Coast. Yes, sir.
Then Brad will be virtual. I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah, I'll be virtual.
Okay.
I might be able to be in person. I'm going to happen to be in London at that time on vacation.
Sounds like a great way to spend your vacation. I've been known to do that too. Or it kind of blurs when you're independent like myself. It kind of blurs whether it's a vacation or IETF. So
It matters what you tell the tax man.
yes. All right. So let me get back to my other thing here. Anything in the document that we need to discuss on the interim here? I'm kind of down to agenda item 4 here: review of issues and documents.
Just anticipation of fixing the erratas. I'm gonna create an issue tracker on the working group's GitHub for each errata, so that we can kind of just start discussing what will need to be changed when the time comes we have to modify text.
Great idea.
That's my only thing. Just so we have focused discussions on those. That's all.
No, that sounds excellent.
Yeah, that is an awesome idea. There's another very small working group that I'm co-chair called Seller, and we essentially spend 45 minutes of our monthly hour basically just walking through the GitHub issues that for which the authors were unable to get clear consensus or on, and usually they just, the things just fall into place, bing, 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 and we just avoid all slideware. It's just, just put up the GitHub issue tracker, click on it, and um, if you get to
Yeah.
hit the merge button at the end of the day, at the end of the discussion, then that's success, right?
Yeah, and that's how I've been following the quick
Yeah.
GitHub trackers, and they do a lot on, they do pretty much everything through there. So they have pretty good results with it as well. So that's going to be the same thing. And we've had good results with it on the previous draft, just getting that
Good.
sort of understanding. In the beginning, I think Brad can agree, we had a little bit of chaos, but we were able to bring it in and focus the discussions and get folks trending towards a working goal and a consensus versus just everybody doing their own thing all over the place. So we've got some experience with that, and it works well.
Good. I think this will work well.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say is that with this and this other group, I keep reminding them that integers are cheap and plentiful, and that that they can always post a new draft, and that one advantage is that we get the smaller sets of diffs to review as things go forward. And sometimes people, especially academics, for one reason, right? They don't want you to see anything until it's all done, right? And they don't want you to see work in progress. And in this case, from the IETF, I think it's much better if we see, I like your idea of a monthly, post the document every month, and if there haven't been any changes, then let's talk about that. Why there are no changes instead.
Right, we can, yeah, exactly, and that brought up on another one. We can always edit it. All right, there's always, there's draft 4. We can always make draft 5. We can always go back and make a draft 6. I've seen some of these things get pretty high.
47.
Like, TLS drafts, they go pretty long. But yep, agreed.
Are we going to plan a series of virtual interim meetings after 115? 115 is second week of November. I'd like to think that we have time to have one more before Christmas, and then have one in January and February. That's in my mind the right thing. Does this time slot work well for everyone? Not necessarily Thursday,
it's okay. It's not like it's perfect. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. You and I would like it earlier in the day, in our day, and meanwhile, Brad is what at 8 o'clock there, Brad?
Well, this normally, actually, you're right. This would have been 8 o'clock. I happen to be on a trip. I got a relative getting married, and so that's why I'm in the car here. So so I'm in Baltimore right now, but usually I'm in Los Angeles, and it would be 8 a.m. Not great for me, but hey, I can make it work.
Yeah, and Jim
No,
as well. I think you're West
It's
Coast.
11 a.m. here.
Yeah, 11
but
is
it's
good
8
for me.
a.m. in Pacific where he normally is.
Yeah, the next meeting it'll be 8 a.m. for me if we did it at the same time. But yeah,
I'm confused because it's
11 a.m. on
the West Coast right now.
It's 11 a.m. Okay, so we could actually move it an hour earlier or so, or 2 hours earlier. Would that be okay with the question?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be
fine with me.
Thursdays are not the best for me, but we can
Jim,
work
had a
that out.
conflict when we worked it out. Okay, so maybe we do need to put a doodle poll up, and what I would love to have is a view as to which are good days and bad days, and then which are good time slots and bad time slots within basically this hour and the 2 or 3 hours beforehand, and then we'll pick a time, and we'll probably just try to stick with that. Put the virtual interims into the data tracker. They'll show up in your calendar, and nobody will forget.
IETF 116 is in March as well, at the end of March. So
that's right.
So I would like to at least get a couple meetings between 115 and 116, whether it be 1 or 2. I think that would make a lot of sense, just to give us some guidance if we have anything to have a discussion like this, because it does provide a little bit of context. Things that get lost in email or chat, just
Right.
talk it out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'd suggest
like,
maybe once a month or something.
yeah. So I was thinking something like, you know, November 24th. That's the U.S. Thanksgiving, right?
Mhm.
December 1st, December 8th. If we were on a Thursday, January 19th, February 23rd, kind of thing, and then that gives us, and then we're into IETF 116, and we could decide not to meet at 116 in person, and only do a virtual meeting, but probably, I hope we're finishing at that point. We can also cancel. We don't need the time. Well, I'll propose something on the list. Do you like doodle polls or hate them? My love
They're
for the
fine.
company is waning.
They're fine.
Okay, I'll post a doodle poll. I'll post up 3 or 4 options each month, and you pick one, and we'll look to try to get something consistent. But if it's not completely consistent because I don't know, someone's daughter's getting married or something, whatever, then well, that's okay.
All right. On the wrong window here, looking at my calendar. Anything else? I think we're kind of at the bottom of the agenda. Is there anything else that we ought to be discussing?
I have done a review of the UUID 4 format document. I don't know if this is the right venue to bring that up. I'm happy to post to the list as well. And I drew out a couple of issues that I see in the draft as it stands. Not the original, the BIS document, to be clear, but the one that introduces versions 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, well that's a reasonable to start talking about the extensions, even though the document's not fully in place. I would ask that you definitely do post your review to the mailing list. But if you want to give us a preview of it, that's fine too.
Okay, so I don't have a slide. I just have notes that I can talk from.
Brendan, do you want to first of all tell us where you're coming from? Because not
Sure.
everyone may know what, where you're active in the IETF and why you have so many UUIDs in your brain.
Right. So I am the author or the lead author of the software update for the Internet of Things draft, and I've also been active um, in the IoT Ops working group, specifically around building threat models for IoT systems as a whole, rather than just the individual bits, and looking at which technologies mitigate those threats. That one's less relevant, I guess. It's probably more relevant in the software update for the Internet of Things side of things, where we use UUIDs as a means to check device compatibility. And I've also worked in what used to be ARM's IoT services group, where individual devices had their own UUIDs, and they generated, events with UUIDs. And of course, those UUIDs weren't RFC 4122 UUIDs. They were these crazy things that somebody made up on the back of a paper napkin. Um, and so I've been working in and around this space a bunch, and so I care a lot about it, which is strange to a lot of people that I care about unique identifiers. But there you go. I guess that's why we're all here. Yeah, so that's sort of my background here. And I, as I think I mentioned, I do have a fair bit of a security hat, and so some of the comments that I have are going to end up veering into that direction a bit. So with that intro, shall I just lead into it?
Go for it.
All right. So with UUID6, I'm worried that 48 bits is not enough. And the reason for this worry is that uniqueness was guaranteed by fiat in the original version. Essentially, you had a guaranteed non-overlap by the node ID. The node ID came from the MAC address, and there was a contract, sometimes violated, but there was a contract with your Ethernet card vendor that there would be no other Ethernet cards with the same address. Yeah, I think I've heard reports that that didn't go so well, but that's not the point. The point is that it was a fiat system for dictating that there shall be no overlapping addresses. So that worked really well from that perspective. The problem that we have going forward is we're explicitly removing the fiat and we're replacing it with randomness. And what was not clear to me in the draft when I read it through the first time is the lifetime of those random numbers. Because if they're randomly generated for your device once and stored, then I fear we run into the birthday problem awfully quickly with trillions of devices and 48 bits. So I think there needs to be some information on exactly what that means.
Right. Are we generating once or are we generating new random each time kind of logic?
Yeah. Or are we generating new random for every monotonic clock increase? Although for UUID6, that's scary because you're talking about 100 nanosecond intervals, which means that the data rate out of your random number source is going to be measured in, is that gigabits? It's going to be pretty fast anyway.
Yeah, and I think the proto. Go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of roll that into. I definitely think there's a lot to unpack there. I have a bunch of things I could say, but I think it's going to be better to do that in writing in a GitHub issue where we can kind of take each thing and say, okay, good, this is the analysis of that. Because I mean, it's really good that there's a really good points. I have answers to some of it, and I think some of it is also kind of context specific. Because you know I just want to say that the short version is like, your uniqueness is always going to be based on, if you want guaranteed uniqueness, then yeah, you have to have that fiat system, and then we can kind of just, there's a whole thing of like, how many holes do you want to poke in that system? It's the whole shared knowledge concept, and that was in the earlier draft. Like, you have to make a decision. You either go random, which does not require any predefined shared knowledge, and all you can do is reduce the probability, or you have a shared knowledge system where an agreement, a fiat system, whatever you have, but then it has to be guaranteed, or it is only as unique as that system. So I think it's kind of like, it's more like we should list all those things out in the issue and then kind of decide what wording represents. Because from my perspective, I think you get into this application specific thing where some people might have an application, they're like, look, this doesn't work for me because I need the guaranteedness, so I want the fiat system. And other people might be like, well, that's great that you have that, but for my application, that fiat system doesn't physically even work, so I'd rather have the probability. And I don't think that there is a right or wrong there. I think it's a matter of just what's the wording that's gonna make each of these systems able to coexist. So that's kind of how I think about it.
This actually brings up an implementation consideration as well, and this is, I think, something that just needs to be documented, not something that needs to be worked around or anything like that. And essentially, the thing is, the point of an internet standard is that it enables devices to cooperate or to be compatible across the internet, right? And so then there's this question about, well, somebody's using a fiat system and someone else is using a random number, and this is theoretically the same version. What does this stuff all mean? And that gets a little bit concerning, right? Because if you have two people committing entries to the same database, and one of them's using a fiat system and the other's using a random number, you're in for a headache. So there's an argument to be made that these actually have to be different revisions, because otherwise you're going to get collisions. There's no if about it. The other side of it, there's the point that these are opaque identifiers, and maybe that's good enough to just say that they're opaque identifiers. So I think that once we dive too deep into the application-specific choices side of things, there's a very real risk of breaking compatibility across dissimilar systems.
Yeah, I want to comment two things. So if there's a potential thought that UUID 6 has not enough random, right? UUID 1 has that as well, because we've got to remember that at the moment 1 is just a bit swizzle of UUID. 6 is just a bit swizzle of UUID 1 with the thing that says, hey, try not to use MAC addresses as a gentle nudge, but not a hard and fast. But they do that as well over in UUID 1. They say if you can't use MAC addresses here, do this other system. So they're kind of similar in that sense, where 1 already has the ability to go either way.
Right. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't write something about implementation considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that the entire best practices section is specific to that, like you're talking about, and we have a section in there about opacity, and that's probably where that comment came from.
That is exactly where that comment came from. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. And then second piece to this is obviously when we talk about internet standards and everybody being compatible and things, that makes a lot of sense when we're talking about protocols and communications and streams and people are talking to each other. But are we, if somebody doesn't know how a UUID works between two different systems, how often are we sending UUIDs amongst systems? How often are we doing stuff like that, where it's like, again, we're using it as an identifier in like a database and we're generating it maybe within an application context or a database context. But am I sending a UUID to you across the internet and you're saying, okay, that's great, and I'm using it in some capacity? I don't know if they're used in that way.
So I totally get that, and that's what I think too. But that doesn't mean I haven't seen people using them as human readable identifiers. I have seen this happen.
Look at our Meet
and like
Echo
presenting
right now,
them to a user, and it's just like, what on earth are you thinking? No one knows what this means. You can't read that. Why are you showing it to anyone? Speaking of which, that needs to be an implementation consideration as well. Do not present this to a user. They don't know what it means.
It's the identifier for our Meet Echo meeting right now.
Never present it to a person.
Yeah, I see it up in the URL bar right now, don't I?
Yep. Well, if it's in a URL bar and it's kind of half hidden from you, that's okay. But I mean, it should never show up in a user interface, and I've seen it happen. Yeah, so that was another one of them. My comments about the lifetime of UUID 6 random data also applies to UUID 7. From what I understood of the handling rollover section and the monotonicity section, it sounded to me like the unique, like the random data was generated once per timestamp. And again, there's this question of, can you handle 74 bits of random data every millisecond? Do you have a random number generator that is capable of doing that? And I guess that depends on whether you're using a PRNG or whether you're using a TRNG. But bear in mind that many people, when they see this, will just use whatever is exposed by the OS. And if that means you're exhausting the random number generator in your processor, that becomes a problem.
Yeah, batch UUID generation was a very large topic, right? Let's say we have to generate 1,000 UUIDs. How do we make sure they're unique and that they're in a very specific order laid down in the database? Because the timestamps are there. And there's a lot of different ways that came about. One was create one random and then increment it. Mm-hmm. You know, and then the other one was set a set of bits as a counter that you pick, and then you counter bit, and then the random can keep generating, and that kind of goes either way, right? That's either option.
Right, but
We weighed a
neither
lot, and neither were bad, but neither were amazing to say that one
neither
was
of
better than the
those
other.
neither of those deal with the issue of exhausting your TRNG's entropy. Right, so the point here is that there's a physical limitation in true random number generators. They have a specific amount of randomness they can generate in a given period of time. And to give you some idea about how critical this actually is, there are proofs of concept out there for creating a covert channel based on random number generator exhaustion, where you communicate between two processes which aren't supposed to know about each other by measuring how long it takes to create a random number on one of them and generating lots of random numbers on the other to send the data. And then you can modulate data through the timing channel that you create there. Okay, so this is a big deal. And if we are using random numbers and we're using them at a high data rate, and people don't use PRNGs, if they actually end up using the true random number generator from their core, you are constructing a performance problem.
Yeah, I just want to comment that in one of the sections we do state we want CPRNG
Yep.
as the one to use. So
I
maybe
understand
that's
that.
already covered in there, and it needs to be
The
discussed a little bit better.
The problem is that when you use a cryptographic random number generator, people will ignore the P there and go, I have a cryptographic true random number generator, that's even better, and then cripple their systems.
Yep, understood. So more clarity around the downsides of the
Yeah, that sounds like a security considerations.
yeah,
Yeah.
understood.
It's
Yeah.
a question of bandwidth, right?
I'm going to completely forget this and the details, so that I'm going to need this in email, but I understand where you're coming from now.
The
Did you have
controlled
other points,
registry
Brendan, that you
scares me.
wanted to chat about?
Yeah, I'm getting there. I've got a couple more. The discussion of counter rollover, and specifically with this centralized registry, that terrifies me. The idea of handling batched UUIDs with a centralized registry is that's horrifying, right? Because that just and you mentioned that this creates a single point of failure, but I'm it worries me enough that if it were my draft, I might consider removing it entirely.
You're talking about section 6.3 for distributed UUID.
With the centralized
generation.
registry, yeah. But I mean, you have to bear in mind the kind of systems that I'm thinking about, right? When I'm thinking about like multiple million IoT device deployments.
Yeah.
And so then when you've got a centralized registry in that kind of context, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Which means that you shouldn't use that implementation in that kind of context. The
Right.
argument, and so you put that in the implementation discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing to remember is, no matter how terrible an idea it is, somebody's likely to if you don't specify a reasonable way of doing it, is going to invent an unreasonable way of doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just want to say that section I wasn't trying to endorse centralized registry. I was saying that these are two ways you can do this, and this one's not the one that we're talking about, and it's outside the scope of this document. So if it reads as if we're endorsing it, I can totally change that verbiage, because
okay, I might have misread that, because I thought that was like a proposal for a possible solution, and I was going, ooh.
No, that was me saying, hey, these are the two prevailing ways of tackling this and handling it. We're not talking about this one. We're going to go on and talk about the next one. So I can add verbiage around this, saying no, this is the bad one. So let me know if it just reads wrong.
I think there was one more comment. I have already mentioned the question about UUIDs and human readability. So there was one other thing. Actually, I'd kind of like some text on that added to the BIS. do not present these in a user interface. They're not for humans. Seems like an important note. And there is a comment on that somewhere about 288 bytes versus 128 bits or something like that. I probably have the numbers wrong, but I remember seeing something to that effect. And yes, absolutely. And
Well, I agree with you on a style from that it's probably not a great idea for a lot of applications, but why is that important to specify? Like, why is it? I understand there's people might do it without thinking about it, but is it really that terrible to have a UUID entered by a user if there's a case
yes,
that warrants it?
it
Why?
absolutely is a terrible way to do things because they'll type it wrong. If they ever have to type it, they'll type it wrong. If they have to remember it, they'll remember it wrong. It's just not something that's built for a human. And sorry, I have a big usability chip on my shoulder, and so when I encounter things like that, it really bothers me. And I'm a big believer in usable security. And when these things are used in an interface, they need to be hidden. They need to be behind the scenes. They need to be done in such a way that the person goes, that's my rock, not your rock. See, it says my rock on it. And not, it says 167 ABDF 37, no, that doesn't help people, right?
Well, at the same
I
time,
mean,
there's
yeah.
at the same
Go ahead.
time there are situations where maybe an account recovery or something like that, you need to have a complex randomly generated secret that the user might have to type in occasionally in order to recover their account. And whether it's in this format or whether it's as base 64, I mean, there just isn't a good way to do that. I guess maybe
There is.
Diceware or something like that. But
There is actually
but
a good way to do it. And what you do is you generate, I think it's like 10 words is all you need. But 10 words are a lot easier to type correctly.
Okay,
So
Diceware.
I was thinking, Brendan, that is it the case that really actually what you're saying is that you never want the hex version of the UUID presented to the user, but
Yeah.
that you might be okay with a standard bubble babble type thing that would allow context. And we have now base 32 and we have base 35, and which was because of QR codes and the COVID passports. And we have a bunch of different technologies that actually are now standardized, and we actually could just point to one of them and say, this is the preferred one if you need to do it.
Yeah.
Because at least that way we get libraries and we get, as you say, if we don't give them a good solution, then they come up with a bad solution often. And
and this comes back to the question about, what is a UUID? And we've said it's opaque. And since it's opaque, we shouldn't present it because we already know it's opaque.
Yeah, I mean, I really would like the opportunity to be able to go back and forth this more and really vet down, get down to the core. I agree with the suggestion, the recommendation. I just don't like. I have an IoT device that uses a UUID as its identifier, and there are
Isn't it
cases where a
terrible?
person has to type it in. It's also it's unique. That's the point, and somebody has to type it in certain cases. I'm not saying there's not a better
Why can't
way.
they scan it
Whatever.
with
I'm
a
just
QR
saying.
code, right?
In
Why
some
can't they
cases
scan
they
a
can't.
QR code instead? So
Maybe
that's
nobody
the
printed the
point,
label.
like
but
I'm
you're
just-
not just
Yeah.
arguing about whether or not the UUID is a good identifier for the IoT device. You're arguing over
No.
whether or not someone should ever have to type it.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And I think it's fine to say you can recommend that they don't. I just don't see how you can put in a spec that you should that you would never do this.
No.
You don't
I was
control all
saying
these applications.
recommend that we don't, right? That was the point I was trying to say. I know I can't say you must not. No.
Okay,
that's fine.
We have 5 minutes left, so let's bear that in mind with the discussion.
No, all I was saying is I would like to see a suggestion that we keep UUIDs out of human readable areas.
Okay.
Cool. And I totally think we can work out the text for that. And yeah, so, but are we good with taking the things that you brought up and
Yeah.
let's put them in issues and be able to get some of this in writing, and I'm sure we can work
Yeah,
through
of
it.
course. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to post some doodle polls probably tomorrow when I'm awake and can grok time zones and for some proposed meetings. Jim, did we actually fill out the session request for 115?
I'm
think
pretty
so.
sure we did.
Yeah, I think we did. Okay, so
Yes.
that'll show up. And Brendan, I think that we've put IoT ops as a conflict already. But if you have other ones that you need, you can look at the session request and see whether we got something wrong.
I'll have a look. Thank you.
Yeah. And so Kaiser is going to be dealing with the table of contents for the 24th. What other actions do we have at this point? Brendan's going to put these in as issues as soon as we have a place to put them in at this point over here. And
Yep, I'm just missing a document to raise them against. That's all.
yeah. Well, okay, so
You can raise an
that's
issue without a document, actually.
Yeah, so this repo has the 4122 converted, and Kaiser is going to be redoing that with as the new table of contents, etc. So these are all template. Kaiser, we could talk about this one-on-one if you like, but basically I pulled in this Martin Thompson template that basically does everything. It sings, it dances, and it makes you breakfast. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's too much, but it does work when it works. When it doesn't, you can't debug it, alas. But basically you type make, even on a Windows for Linux machine, and it downloads everything you need and compiles spits out HTML for you.
I'm familiar with make, so we're good. I'll work in a branch, and then when I have to merge it in, I'll do it, and if I have any issues, we'll sync up.
Okay, so good. Jim, you want to close it all off for us?
Yeah,
Final words?
Any other business from anybody? I'll take that as a no. So I guess we're all set. Thank you for coming to the first interim, and look forward to seeing many of you. Let's see, the next one is the 115 meeting, right? We're not getting together before that, right?
I think that's correct.
Right. So hopefully see some of you at 115 live. Others, I'm sure we'll see on the screen. Thanks for coming.
Great.
Thanks, everyone. It was really interesting.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
I agree.